Shalom and warm greetings from Jerusalem. We're reporting to you our Israel Vision magazine today from Mevaseret Zion, the community where we're broadcasting from, and it means in Hebrew, announcing the good news from Zion. Now today we're going to be talking about a controversial subject that many of you have been following in the world press. It's the fence, or as the Palestinians call it, the wall. And it's quite a subject because it has a lot of emotion behind it.
Well, some of the facts about this fence or this wall are that actually it's not a wall, it is just a wire fence. 95.5% of it could be taken down in a matter of 2 or 3 days. 3.5% of it is made of concrete blocks, which have been placed in an area where several suicide bombers passed into Israel. It's actually a matter of life and death for Israelis to have this fence, in spite of all of the controversy. Now we know that Israel was taken to the World Court in The Hague in Holland just recently, and I received this letter from a dear prayer partner in Holland, Hermina Nijenhout, and this is what she says. Last week, on Monday, Christians for Israel had organized a silent walk in The Hague. We started in a park in the outskirts of the town and walked with our 2,000 people along the Peace Palace where the court was listening to the Palestinians. And she goes on to say, as you see, I joined the walk with my crutches, so I had no hands free to carry a picture of a victim of terror attacks. Have you seen any of it in newspaper or on television? Of course not. It's the good news, and so it's been squashed or filtered out. Christians for Israel also paid to have the bombed bus number 14 flown to The Hague as a silent witness of what terror means to Israelis. What was one of the comments of the judges in The Hague over the Israeli presenting the pictures of the 927 dead from terror attacks in the last 3.5 years and the bus? Well, the Israelis are so emotional. What is missing here?
Well, a few facts would help. Since the last Intifada started 3.5 years ago, there have been some 20,162 terror attacks in Israel by Palestinians coming in over the border to shoot, to stab, to throw grenades, to bomb buses, as Maridel just mentioned. And there has been 927 innocent civilians killed, which, leaves thousands of orphans and over 5,900 injured. The toll in society is enormous. And then we forget to even mention the retaliation by the Jewish people, by the Israelis, and the thousands and thousands of Palestinians that have been injured, and all unnecessarily, because Mr. Arafat has opted to use the peace process that he believes in, and that's terror. I'll give you an example. Why did Israel put up this fence? They call it an operational division to save civilian lives. The Palestinians call it an apartheid fence or wall. The reason is very simple, that between April and December of 2002, there were 17 terror attacks that came in from northern West Bank. Then they put up this wire fence, largely wire, and the number of suicide attacks dropped down to 5 suicide bombers coming in between January and December of 2003. So in fact, the fence works. Another proof that this fencing idea works is because in Gaza, where there is a fence around Gaza, there hasn't been one single suicide bomber being able to penetrate into Israel over that border. And so it really works. The fence works. But we want you, as the viewers, to make up your own mind. And here's the Israel Defense Ministry spokesman to give his comments.
Here's one of the best places to see why we need a security fence. Here's Bethlehem, that's the Palestinian Authority. And here's Jerusalem. A few yards here is the last house on the block of Jerusalem. And here's the divide. In other words, there is nothing to stop a suicide bomber from just crossing, even by foot, the hill over here and making his way into Jerusalem. That's perhaps one of the easiest ways to see why we need a fence. The last 2 suicide bombings in Jerusalem were carried out by suicide bombers who came from the Bethlehem area. So basically, all they have to do is to drive their car to the end of the road, cut across the hill, and they're in Jerusalem and just jump on a bus. That's the unfortunate reality of the situation. So what we've done is we've begun in the Jerusalem area to build a security fence, and you can see it over there. That's to divide the Palestinian Authority and Jerusalem. And it's a very, the purpose of the fence is simply to detect people who cross or the attempt to cross. We have basically an electronic sensor on the fence, and that alerts the patrols to go and to check. Here, for example, this is new, unfortunately. This is an observation post that's just been built, and that monitors the fence, so they can also guide the patrols to the point at which the fence is touched. And then that gives us time, even if the terrorist has crossed the fence, we have enough time for the patrol to get there, at least to chase him in this open area before he gets to the houses here. So that's the rationale of the fence, and you see here exactly why it's needed. This is not to harm anyone. This is simply it's not even to prevent people from coming. It's to make sure that people, when they come, they go through a point where they can be checked. That's all it is. It's not even, people can come into Israel from the Palestinian Authority if they have proper permits. It's just to prevent people who want to kill us from coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate your time here. Thank you. The question is, do good fences make good neighbors? Here are some comments of the leader of the Palestinian protest against the wall.
We feel that the wall is bad because it will affect us by 3 ways. The first way, they want by a wall to destroy our land and to cut our olive trees. They want to connect us by our city, Ramallah, by 1 metal gauge, and a soldier is a checkpoint on it. You couldn't go regularly. The soldier called telephone. The wall will be shut. There is maybe if there is any a problem happened in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv or any way, the gate will be shut. So we couldn't go regularly to our works and to our things.
The inconvenience of the fence doesn't seem to outweigh the need to protect innocent civilians' lives.
My father was in the States. He was actually giving a lecture to American doctors and hospitals on how to act in cases of large terrorist attacks. He was, he had a lot of experience in the matter, and he was giving a lecture on the way that we handle the cases here in Israel. The next morning, he returned from the United States. That was the morning before my sister's wedding. That evening, they went out to get a cup of coffee in Cafe Hillel, just to have a nice little chat the evening before. And while they were pulling up to the curve, the terrorists exploded. I believe that the best way to fight terrorism is to continue living the way we lived, which means continue going to the coffee shops, which we do, continue taking buses if it means, just continuing life in Israel as we'd like to do it. The terrorists, their whole purpose is really to scare us away, want us to leave the country, make our lives miserable. And the best way to fight terrorism is, in my opinion, is really just to keep living life to its fullest.
The death of Dr. David Applebaum and his daughter Nava on the eve of her wedding drives home the need for increased security.
هذا الجدار يمنعني من استغلال أرضي ويعرض حياتي للخطر. هذا الجدار يؤثر على جميع أراضي القرية، وكما قلت يمنع أو يحرم أصحاب الأراضي، ويمنعني ويحرمني أنا أيضا من استغلال أرضي ومن فلاحتها، وبالتالي يعرضنا جميعا في القرية للخطر الداهم الذي يشكله الجنود الإسرائيليون في تواجدهم في هذه المنطقة. طبعا بوجود هذا الجدار في أراضي لا تملكها إسرائيل، وفي منطقة غير وليست منطقة إسرائيلية، وبالتالي هم يتعدون على حقوق الآخرين. هو الجدار كما قلت لا يوقف العمليات ضد إسرائيل، وحشر المواطنين الفلسطينيين في جيتوهات يضاعف من معاناتهم، ومعروف بأن الضغط يولد الانفجار.
Israel's placement of the barrier has come under local and international criticism, but the fence was never intended as a border, but simply a security funnel.
Yeah, the fence initially was an attempt to stop the suicide bombers from coming over here. There's been more than 100 suicide attacks now only the last 3 years, and for the Israelis obviously it's been pretty much nothing short than hell. Going to restaurants, going on buses, people don't know if they would get home in the evening simply. It's been a very horrible period. The problem, however, is that the fence is not put up along the international border or the green line between Israel and the West Bank. Rather, it's being put up at some areas deep inside the West Bank, making this into a political issue rather than a security issue. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians will be affected by this barrier. Won't be able to get to their fields, won't be able to visit family, get health care or schooling. So, whereas the barrier has been needed for a security reason, things would have been much better also internationally for Israel had the Israeli government put it up along the international border.
Israel put up the fence as a last resort when neither the Palestinian Authority nor the UN could pressure terror organizations to stop suicide attacks.
The main problem, there isn't any other problem in Palestine, but is the Israeli occupation. People around the world, they say, what's going on there, maybe a lot of people don't know about it. The Israeli occupation is the problem. Israeli occupation builds a wall inside the Palestinian lands. If they say, the Israeli government say this is for security reasons, but I don't think it's for security reasons. It's only for stealing the land. Security reasons, if they need the wall for security reasons, they could build it at their own land, which is at the borders of 1967. Each village is like a jail after this wall. They can't go out of their village, they can't enter it, so it's like the wall of the jails. From my point of view, there isn't any Palestinian terrorism. As long as there is occupation, as long as there's going to be resistance. Somebody takes your land, you're going to resist him. You're not going to stay and look at him, he's stealing your land. Besides, if they want peace and live in peace, why don't they end their occupation? Go out of Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, go out of West Bank, go out of Gaza, and then they will get the peace.
Unfortunately, the giving up of land for peace by Israel has never prevented terrorism in the Middle East conflict.
We at Shaare Zedek are the second largest hospital in the Jerusalem area. We are located physically near the center of town. As a result, over the course of the last 3 years, we have received over 50% of the casualties from the local terrorist attacks, just because of our physical location and our capability, because we are a relatively large hospital, that from the last 3 years, that most of the terrorists that have come and caused terrorist attacks inside Israel have been terrorists that have come from Judea and Samaria and Gaza, and they come most of the time by land. But the fence will provide a physical barrier so that people will not be able to walk from where they are now to the civilian population centers in Israel proper to perform terrorist attacks. So we expect on our side the number of terrorist attacks and the enormity of the injured to be reduced drastically once the fence is up and functional.
Israel, being a democracy, has Arab members of parliament who side with the Palestinian point of view while failing to mention the vital need for security.
We do speak about fence in some places and about 8 meters high wall. And this wall, if it was only for security causes, it should have been put in the frontiers or the occupied territory since 1967. You see, it's not only violating, it's just demolishing everything. They are demolishing people. They're making the Palestinian people in prison, and they can't move from one side to other in the same state, in the same village, in the same town. They can't go to agriculture.
Farmers can't go
the
back and
farmers,
forth.
yes, their farms. And the Israeli says that we should permit you to go. What does that mean, permit you? It's my basic right to be here. Nobody has the right to take me out from my village and from my family and from my land. I live here thousands of years, my grandfather and grandfather. I think everything turns us back to why don't we have peace? Let Israel agree to have the 80% of Palestine and leave the Palestinians alone. And no problem should be there.
Now, the city of Jerusalem is surrounded by Palestinian area. So the south was Bethlehem and Beit Jala, as you saw, and now we're facing north, and the city that you see on the hilltop just over there is Ramallah, a few kilometers away, and that's where Arafat's headquarters are. Now, if you take the expanse of the city of Ramallah, it's very long, and it travels about 4 kilometers south and joins almost onto the city of Jerusalem. And if a terrorist wants to, they can put on their terror bomb and walk from this area of Ramallah, the south part of Ramallah, into Jerusalem. So with the proximity of the two cities, the reason why the fence is there is simply to have a checkpoint to make sure the people that go across are not armed with bombs. And most people are innocent civilians wanting to go into Jerusalem for economic reasons. And so you see the problem is that most people in the rest of the world are completely unaware of the closeness and the proximity of the two communities. The fence is designed to make it so that terrorists can't get in. It is not to keep people out, and it's not to be there permanently, as we have heard. It is simply to be a funnel point for security reasons. Today we're continuing on in our fact and fantasy of the Middle East conflict, and we're talking about land ownership. And today I want to explain to you why the Palestinian people could have had a state in this area 7 times in recent history. When I say recent history, I'm talking about the last 100 years. I'll give you some examples. In 1917, the Balfour Declaration was declared by Britain at that time as the most powerful nation on earth, giving the Jews a homeland. And that declaration became a foundation stone for a later declaration by the British Mandate after Second World War, when the League of Nations gave the British the right to rule this area, and they carved out Palestine, which we call Israel today, and gave that as an area exclusively for Jewish settlement. Then the League of Nations endorsed that, mandated that again in July 24th, 1922, and this was all ratified by the United Nations Partition Resolution in November 29th, 1947. As you see on the map in front of you, you'll see how the partition plan came into being and how the nation that was originally earmarked for Jewish settlement was actually divided into Palestinian and Jewish areas. The lighter colored areas are for Jewish settlement, the darker colored areas for Arab settlement. And this was to be the solution. And in fact, it was a UN resolution number 181. And this was the mother of all resolutions in the Middle East. The Jews accepted this, but the Arabs did not accept it. And that's the big question. Why would they not accept this two-state solution? Because even down to this very day, we're still battling over this same problem. And so next time I'm going to explain to you why the Arab nations would not accept this United Nations resolution that would have brought a solution to the problems in the Middle East.
Welcome again to the Still Small Voice. I enjoy meeting with you, and I hope that you enjoy our little moments together. One friend of ours from Canada, Marg Nicholson, who is the pastor's wife of a very strict Brethren church, invited us 30 years ago to come and teach their church about Israel. Our boys were just little in those days. And this is what she just wrote. Your newsletters, Jerusalem Vistas and the Still Small Voice, are so much more than news, for they balance the imbalance of world news. It's almost like a personal visit. A cup of tea is missing. So sometimes when your letter comes, I put on the pot. How do you like that? So we can have a cup of something together and commune. I think we're all weary of the high pressure of religion, of the demands upon all of us to be giving and doing and being, and we never feel that we're good enough. I can't take it. So what I do is I write a little letter called the Still Small Voice, which comes down underneath all of the pressure and helps us to quieten down and say, Lord, what would you say to me today? It doesn't matter what your name is. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter whether you're a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Christian, or a Jew. God is the God of all mankind. He is the Father of all men. And He would love you to come and introduce yourself to Him. You can do that. That's not ridiculous. Right where you are, you can take a quiet moment. You can say, Father, this is if you haven't met Him yet, I would like to know you. Could you speak to me? He will. Just believe it when it happens. I would love to hear from you. If you would like to ask me questions, or I could send you my newsletter, you can contact me, israelvision.com, care of the Still Small Voice.
One thing we'd like to do is to give you more information on a regular basis. You can be in touch with us by contacting us at www.israelvision.com, and we'll be glad to send you our regular newsletter. It's called Catch the Vision, and in it you'll get some behind-the-scenes information about our work, but especially about what's happening in Israel today from a biblical perspective. Also, we are inviting you to join us this year on our 36th anniversary of Coming to Israel tour. And we're going to take you around the country to a fascinating tour of visiting of places and people that you wouldn't normally meet on a regular tour group. We're going to introduce you to some of the people we've interviewed over the years and give you a look at what they're actually doing. We're going to take you to the hospital down there at Haim Sheba and see the new rehabilitation center that we helped to film. Also, we're going to take you to Jaffa and to Rabbi David and to his special work of the Institute of Jaffa. And they're feeding young people. They're feeding children, both Arab and Jewish, every day, 4,000 meals. And by supporting Israel Vision, you're actually helping the poor, the widows, and the fatherless in this country.
You know, Jay and I have spent our lives trying to be and trying to give a voice to the voiceless. We worked in the Soviet Union for a period of 20 years, from 1971 to 1991, fighting for the freedom of Soviet Jews. That's just one example of the people we've worked for.
And it's interesting, in that year of 1990 to 91, about the largest number of Soviet Jews in all of the history came out. Nearly a quarter of a million came out that one year.
Yeah, so it's been marvelous. But I said that to say that you can do something for us. We are doing our best to give you factual information, to bring you inside of this nation so that you would understand the news from a different perspective. We need partners. We need you to catch the vision of Israel Vision magazine. This magazine is going to 195 nations of the world out of Zion. That's rather astounding. It's marvelous, but we can't do it without partners. We need to hear from you. Please contact us at www.israelvision.com. israelvision.com.
We want to say that our prayer is, as we conclude this program, that the peace of the Messiah would rest and remain in your home and on your family. And that wonderful word shalom is so all-inclusive. It means peace, well-being, a sense of hope and expectation and blessing. And so that's our prayer. May peace rest and remain in your home from Zion. Shalom from Jerusalem.